Our next presenter actually is Jim Jordan or Jeff Jordan, excuse me. I got Jim's on my mind. Jeff is going to talk to us about something that I think is really kind of exciting. His club has actually gotten land and is in the process of contracting to build a new building, and he's going to take us through the steps they've gone through to actually do that. So with that, I'm gonna throw this over to Jeff and let Jeff talk a little bit about it.
Hi, Phil. Thanks for the intro. Let me start with some background. Some of you may remember having seen me or my predecessor, Jim Clevenger, talk about this project when it was in the concept stage and now is very much in the implementation stage. What was previously called the Winchester Model Railroad Club had a long history, went all the way back to 1982, and for many years um, occupied the CSX Freight House in downtown Winchester, and for 20 years was a highlight of the town's first night Winchester celebration. We had as many as 1,200 people tour our layout on a single night. And so it was very well known, very popular, very well supported until one day CSX sold the freight house and gave us 60 days to get out. And so that was the end of our popular model railroad, and it seemed potentially the end of the club as well. But the folks who were running the club at that time had a great deal of foresight and said, we're not going to give up. We're going to find a new location. And also, in their foresight at the time, they realized the advantage of changing from a club to a 501(c)(3) charitable organization, an educational organization that would provide educational information about the history of railroading in the Shenandoah Valley, and also a museum. And so that's what we are today, is actually an educational organization as opposed to a private club. However, the reason we are where we are today is only partially based upon the 501(c)(3). It's also because the town of Middletown, Virginia, which is a historic small town in Virginia, about 10 miles south of Winchester, Virginia, sits adjacent to the famous Cedar Creek battlefield. Cedar Creek was the climactic battle of the Civil War in 1864. The Union victory on this battle guaranteed the reelection of President Abraham Lincoln, and the battle actually occurred next to and through the town of Middletown. Some of the buildings in Middletown today, few, still date to the Civil War era. And so at the time or shortly after we had lost our lease and were hunting around, the town of Middletown was in their own urgent circumstances, that there was a proposal to develop more than 22 acres inside the town of Middletown with townhouses. And the community was very upset, among other reasons, because the infrastructure of the town couldn't support such a large addition of residences, and the entire infrastructure, water, sewer, etc., school, what have you, was all too small to accommodate that. And the mayor, a very dynamic fella, got to work, and ultimately the town acquired the land and basically put it into a scenic easement and a park adjacent to the battlefield, and hoped to ultimately add historic markers, walking trails, and the like. However, the town is very modest means and was looking for a way to raise funds, which they couldn't do on their own. The town recognized, interestingly enough, that this site included the historic 1906 Baltimore and Ohio Railroad station that had once stood in the town and had actually been torn down in the 1960s, and thought, gee, isn't this an interesting opportunity? We could recreate the station. The station would have a parking area, would have the meeting room, and would work in conjunction with the battlefield tours. And we need an organization that would take that on. And lo and behold, they found us. a 501c3 organization looking for a new home. And so the town of Middletown and the now called Winchester and Middletown Model Railroad Association launched a joint effort to plan, design, fundraise, and build a reproduction, a one-to-one model of the 1906 Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Station, and to add an annex on the back that would house a large exhibition model railroad. And in addition, the station space itself would house a museum, a reproduction of the agent's office dressed out for period railroad agent's office, and the original passenger waiting room would be available as meeting space. Also, there will be a large parking lot, which will be available for utilization of the station, but also will be available to folks who want to explore the walking trails that take them through the battlefield and through the town and the sites in the town that actually were part of the battlefield. So it's a very, very happy synergy that has brought all of these things together. Our need for a new home, our having turned ourselves into a 501c3 organization, having continuing support from the community. We continue to do model railroad displays with our large modular model railroad. So we continued to be known. And then some very, very generous grants from a number of benefactors, including Dave Holliday Construction, who is a local home builder who has contributed $100,000 of value to the project and has acted as the general contractor for the construction of the shell of the building. Several other benefactors, the J.J. Smith Foundation, granted us $50,000. The Shenandoah Valley Battlefield Foundation paid $75,000 to the town of Middletown for the scenic easement, walking trails, and parking access. And a number of other donors. Just this past December, the local Elks Club gave us $10,000. And so we have succeeded in raising well in excess of $200,000 for the construction of the structure. We're still in the fundraising mode. We have some more to raise, but we have the means to complete the reconstruction of the station. And so wanted to show you some pictures tonight of the model, including the architectural model, the historic station, and the great activity that has been occurring the past few months from a vacant, overgrown lot into a nearly finished railroad station. Phil, if you want to start walking through the slides now. This is my model of the station. You'll see in the background there, that's the photograph of the 1906 station. It was the only information I had to work from to build the model. I cheated a little bit. It's not a scratch build. It is a commercially available kit, extensively modified to resemble the station. I had to narrow it, I had to lengthen it, I had to change the roof line. So there were a lot of changes, but it ended up as a very nice reproduction of the station and also triggered a debate about colors. And apparently the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad changed the colors of their stations numerous times. I believe the photograph shows it in the dark red with brown trim, which is an early 20th century paint scheme, which changed later on, and we've actually elected to use a later paint scheme. But there she is. There's the station. Next slide, please. And there's the historic photograph. The railroad tracks in front there are still there and are still operated by the CSX Railroad. Indeed, the footprint of the station in that photograph is on the railroad's right of way, so we couldn't build there. We actually had to build further back beyond the railroad right of way. And since it wasn't going to be facing right on the tracks, it would look kind of funny to have the station standing with nothing in front of it. We elected to rotate the footprint 90 degrees so it will front on the road, which also has the advantage of putting the exhibition hall, which of course is not period, out behind the building. The water tank will not be reproduced, but the concrete footings for that water tank still are in place. Next slide, please. There's an architectural model of what the building will look like. The planning people required us to put a fence around the platform because it is elevated. Because of the geography of the ground, which slopes away from the railroad tracks down to a stream, we had to elevate the building a bit, make sure that we're well away from any flood from the stream. And so the one concession is that the platform has to have a railing around it. But this is a closer but not quite exact rendering of the final colors. The B&O stations for many years were indeed painted in kind of a mustard yellow with green trim, and that's the color scheme we've decided to go with. You can't quite see from this photo, but the roof is off so that you can see the interior partitions between the freight room, the agent's office, and the waiting room. The original structure did not have any bathrooms. We decided we'd add one. Also, you can see the exhibition hall in the back. And the great feature of that exhibition hall is that it has no interior supports. It is built with roof trusses so that it is an entirely unobstructed space, 35 feet wide and 60 feet deep, and will be filled with a terrific model railroad. But there you go. There's the architectural rendering of the station. And the next slide. This is the site. When I took this photograph, the railroad tracks are directly to my back, and this is the earliest photo I can find. There are some photos around where the area behind the Middletown sign was also all full of trees, but they had just started to clear the site when I took this photograph. Next slide. And we'll have several photographs now of tree clearing, which was actually a fairly significant project because this site had been completely vacant since the 1960s. Apparently, for a brief period after the station was demolished, there was a fuel dealership on the site, and you will see the foundations that remained from that. So they had to be removed. But after the 1960s, this site was vacant and unused until this construction started in the late summer last year. And so, as you can see, look at the size of those trees. There was a lot of work involved in cutting down and clearing trees. This is First Street, and as you can see in the distance, the building is going to be to the right of the equipment here, and there's the railroad tracks. Next slide. And I think we can move through some of these a little bit more quickly. Again, you see the railroad tracks in the back. There's the back of the Middletown sign, and lots of activity with the fellows cutting down and removing all those trees. Next slide. And more activity. The site clearing was a big project. It took them quite some time, not only to cut down all these trees, but all of those stumps were removed as well. And they used some rather heavy equipment to accomplish that. Next slide. Oh, this is a floor plan. Actually, it's got architectural details for the construction of the building of the notes on there, but you can see the footprint. The original station is long and narrow. It's 40 feet across the front and only 16 feet deep. And those were the dimensions. We actually discovered the Baltimore and Ohio stock plans for a standard branch line station. And so we were able to determine the dimensions from that. And then, as you can see, the architects grafted on the largest exhibition hall that we could fit in the space, 35 feet wide. In other words, almost as wide as the 40-foot station and 60 feet deep. over 2,000 square feet inside that room. Next slide. More activity with clearing here. You can see now that they've finally revealed the old concrete foundation in several places, and you can see they used some pretty heavy equipment to clear things out. Again, in the lower left-hand picture, there's the Middletown sign that you saw before that was backed by trees. Next slide. This just shows how close we are to the CSX tracks. That's First Street, where it crosses the CSX track. There is the CSX. It's kind of a secondary main line that runs down through Middletown and does have railroad operations. A couple of times a day, we'll see a train go by. And the siding there, which is not used terribly often, but is still functional. And as you can see, some railroad maintenance equipment on the siding. Next slide. And this is, as I joked at the time, it's hard to take a good picture of nothing, but this is to show that there's nothing on the site. And there they are with heavy equipment, literally breaking up the concrete foundation. Fortunately, it was a very shallow foundation, so they didn't have to dig down, but they did break up the walls and the footings. Next slide. More activity cleaning the site. It was really something to watch this machine pull out tree stumps, hook that bucket underneath a tree stump, and then begin to pull and literally cause that massive machine to lean until the tree stump gave up and came out of the ground. Next slide. Yeah. And clearing, but and then you can see they have actually begun to stake the footprint. There's the remains of the foundation, all being broken up and removed. We had the great good fortune that while this was going on, and because we had thought we were going to have to pay to have all that busted up concrete removed, a guy showed up and said, "What are you guys doing with all that broken concrete? I need a bunch of fill. Can I take the busted concrete?" He said, "Knock yourself out. It's all yours for free. Just get it off the site." And so we saved all the cost of having that hauled and dumped. Next slide. Again, more pictures. You can see the heavy equipment there they used to break up the foundation. Next slide. Also, you can see our neighbors in the background. And the answer is, what do the neighbors think about this? The neighbors are uniformly happy that they had a derelict, overgrown, unattractive lot that at one point had been threatened to be townhouses. And it's going to be parkland with our station in a parking lot. It's not going to be an intensively used site. So it significantly beautifies the neighborhood in a low intensity use. The neighbors are thrilled. Next slide. There you go. There's another picture of nothing. The foundations are gone. Next slide. And again, this is more site preparation and leveling. The gravel there is just to help get machinery in. And there you go. You can see where they have excavated this. Go ahead to that next slide, where you see the foundation work has begun, that they didn't have to dig down very much. The building does not have a basement. It has a pretty substantial crawl space, up to 5 feet underneath the building. And so in this site, some of the footers have been put in and the forms are going in to pour the cement for the foundation. Next slide. And as it goes along, you'll begin to see the contours of the building. And lots of activity here. Those are the trenches where the cement for the footers is going to go in, or was going to go in at that time. Next slide. And there you can see more formers for the foundation. across the street, a very interesting old building, once was a store, unfortunately now is boarded up. We hope that one of the town's subsequent projects will be to rehabilitate that store in as much as this is now the town's parkland. And that would be another nice feature to have the period store back in existence as well. Next slide. And if it isn't obvious, I guess I should have mentioned that the town will own this building, but the agreement between us and the town is we have a 25-year lease for the site, which generally is not terminable except for, breach on our part, or if the town decides that they need the site, they can buy it from us for a very substantial sum. Next slide. Cement, that is the pump, and they are pumping cement into the forms in these pictures. Next slide. More work filling the forms, but now you can see, especially in that right-hand photograph, there's the footprint of the building. The parking lot would be to the right. The area in the left with the gravel in it is actually part of the parkland. There is some hope that someday we'll put some track in there and park a caboose there. And then next to that would be the railroad tracks. Next slide. More cement pumping going on. Next slide. And there's the foundation with the forms stripped off, the flood doors in the walls. If the water gets out of hand, the 500-year flood, the structure is built that it is elevated enough and that it would drain through those automatic flood doors. That took us quite a while. We spent 5 months with the county talking about the site, the water, and so forth. Next slide. Again, just more close-ups of the foundation. Here we go. There's the inside. You can see the gravel down in the crawl space, and then that will be covered with a vapor barrier. And then again, oh, actually, you can see the proximity very nicely in that right-hand photograph, that the road up there and the old store is First Street, and you can see the railroad crossing sign on the right. So you can see how close we are to the original location of the station. Next slide. Those are the footings. We have to, among other things, make the building handicapped accessible. And given its height, we will have a good-sized handicapped ramp running down one side of the building. Next slide. Another shot of the interior. The the dugout spots there are where the footings go inside the crawl space to support the floor of the exhibition hall. Next slide. More pictures of the footings. Next slide. Footings are in place. Foundation is complete. Next slide. And there we are. Carpenters showed up and they told us that when they started building, they were going to build continuously. The crews would be there every day. They wanted to finish in kind of one continuous effort, that would minimize the cost. They would not pull crews off and go and work on something else. And of course, we had the benefit of being built in the middle of the slow season, that these guys are home builders. They're not building homes in January and February for the most part. And so we had a lot of crews available, a lot of equipment available to put this together in very quickly. And so there's the deck of the entire structure going in place. Next slide. And there's the walls. And why is there no picture between the deck and this? Because they did that in one day. They came up with a 5-man carpenter crew. The wood was staged there. This was all framed on site. It was really impressive to see these 5 guys lay out these walls and raise them in a single day. Next slide. And there's further development on completing the walls and wrapping the walls with Tyvek. Next slide. And there's the other side with the Tyvek on. There's the front, not quite completely wrapped, but you can see all the exterior walls are in place and they've begun to frame the interior in this picture. Next slide. And there's the walls up, and the Tyvek framed the roof trusses. Again, they got all those roof trusses in place in a single day. They showed up early in the morning with a crane, and the crane started just swinging those things in place with a carpenter crew. You can see a guy up on the roof there tying them all together as they went. Next slide. And very quickly thereafter, though we did have an intervening snowstorm, and so they literally the snowstorm occurred like on a Saturday night. By Monday, they had all the snow cleared out, and then proceeded to put on the subroofing. The piles of snow there are out the 2 doors, so you can see that's where the snow went. And then they got the roof sheathing on, and you can see the shingles are actually staged in the left-hand picture, and in the right-hand picture, the shingles are on. Took them 2 days to shingle the entire building. You can also see all the windows and doors are in place here, except for the large window that will go in the agent's office, which we're still waiting for. Next slide. I think we're pretty much at the end there of the construction photos. Yeah, and so here we are. From 1906 in the lower left-hand corner with the original station, my model of the station, the architectural rendering of the station, and the station itself. I think it's a very, very favorable comparison to the period station, given the allowances we had to make for the elevation, and that will be much less evident once the platform, which you see in the architectural rendering, is built and in place. It's going to have a lattice work on the lower portion, so it'll de-emphasize that. And the station frontage, which you can see they're nearly finished, it really shows off its railroad station character. And so that's why we placed it at the road. And the 2 sides, actually, which are completely blank because it's going to house a large model railroad. And they asked us if we wanted any windows, and we said no. We've had a local garden center is contributing 12 trees, so we can put trees down the sides and dress up those blank sides a little bit. But the lower right-hand photograph is basically where we are as of yesterday. And we have approved the materials for the siding. The siding material will arrive shortly, and the builders will put the siding on the building. They will put that last window in, and then they will turn the building over to us. And we will act as our own contractor from that point on, though the general contractor has said that they're going to assist us in finishing, but we have the great good fortune that one of our members is a master electrician who worked in commercial electrical work for many years. And he will supervise all the electrical, and his friends at the company he worked for will do the inspections and approvals. We also have 2 home builders as members of our organization, and we have a bunch of members who have said they're going to come and carry materials, swing hammers, or whatever else we need to do to get it done. We have hired a plumber, a local, very well-regarded local plumber, who said he has given us the best deal he has ever given on a commercial deal. We have received a lot of generous contributions from the material suppliers and the subcontractors to help get us to where we are. We estimate that the finished building that you're seeing there is about a $250,000 cost and has already been appraised at $500,000. So there we are. After dreaming for years, working and planning for years, in a matter of months, it went from an empty field to the structure you see today. And we are very excited.
That's outstanding, Jeff. I mean, it's great to see a club rise from the ashes, so to speak, kind of a phoenix. Any questions for Jeff about, the structure, the club, the process they went through, and especially, I think, how they were so successful in having the community support you? Because it sounds like you're just incredibly well integrated into the community from a cultural perspective and a political perspective. Any
Absolutely.
questions for Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff, I guess having had a fuel dealer that was there after the station was taken down, even for a while, I guess you didn't have to do any type of hazmat cleanup or anything, which probably would have been expensive.
Yes, and was one of my fears, but when they excavated, the site was clean. We had both foundation contractor, the site clearing contractor, and the builder all inspected it, and it was inspected by the county. And so, I was really worried, but I
Yeah.
think it may have been a propane dealership or something like that.
Okay,
And so,
not much spillage.
exactly,
spills,
whatever they did, it did not contaminate the site.
You're
Thank-
lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, what's your ceiling height in the layout room going to be?
Both the station and the exhibition hall are going to have 12-foot ceilings,
Nice.
which again is replicating the original station, which had the 12-foot ceiling. In 1906, there's no air conditioning, and they tended to build high ceilings to try and keep things a little cooler. And so we replicated that in the exhibition hall as well, which
So
will do several things for us.
Since you just mentioned that, where is all the mechanicals going?
There is a utility room in the station space behind the agent's office.
Okay.
It's going to be electric heat and cooling. The external units will be down the left-hand wall. The interior components will be in the ceiling.
I'd like to make a few comments, Jeff, if I could.
Yeah.
I'm from your area, and I am. And I know a lot of the members there, and I used to go to the original layout. And when you had received notice that you had to vacate, the guys really never lost that drive. It was like when you talk to them, they may not know, they didn't know the answer right then, but they were not going to give up. And I think that is a very credit to the members. And I visited that layout quite a few times, and I really liked it. It was a nice layout. By the way, there are a few YouTube videos of that layout, well worth watching.
Yes, Jimmy Lambert has a video called something like Scenes of a Lost Layout, where he does a very nice presentation as to what the whole layout in the Freight House looked like. But you're absolutely right, Steve. The members, especially the previous president, Jim Clevenger, they made a conscious decision that we're going to work on keeping this together. And ever since the old location closed, we have continued to meet weekly to talk about model railroading, to talk about each other's model railroads, to do model railroad activities together, and some prototype visits as well. And so the group stuck together, because if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be here.
And you've continued to have a train show?
Yes, twice a year.
And so you've been active in the community, and that kept your name was still out there, and I think that makes a big difference. Especially when you went to a community a few miles down the road, who already knew your experience. But I tell you, if you look at those YouTubes, you'll see some very nice films of the layout. It had some
Thank
very
you.
unique features, in my opinion. One, you went under the layout, you had a work area. And number two, it had a real high area that you could overlook the entire layout. It was like a,
Crow's Nest. We intend to replicate that on the new layout so that for shows where we just have continuous running trains, the operators will be able to be up in the crow's nest with some people on the ground to watch out for derailments and the like. But yeah, that is definitely a feature that people liked and wanted to replicate in the new model railroad. To make clear, because we did get a question, the historic layout was HO scale, and the new exhibition layout will be HO scale as well. However, we have several members who are O scale, especially Lionel types, and we have decided to put around the ceiling type layout in some of the space in the station space. So they will have some construction to do as well. And we're also fortunate that a local family had the misfortune of their son being killed in an accident, and he had built the benchwork and laid the track of an extensive model railroad, and they have donated that to us, and it is poised to go in as soon as the space is finished. We will set up that layout. So from almost the first day that we are open, we will have an operating model railroad that members can work on while we're finishing the planning and construction of the large layout in the exhibition hall.
Are there any plans to have an open house, anytime soon?
Well, we expect to have some sort of grand opening ceremony in late spring when the space is finished. And as I said, we're going to try, it will either have our display modular layout or this donated layout in with some trains running, and we will have the start of our museum as well. So watch for our announcements. We do have a decent amount of social media. We have a Facebook page, Winchester Model Railroad. Just search that on Facebook and you'll get to our Facebook page. We also have our own web page, WMRRC.org, and we announce developments on there as well. And if you want to get on our email list, just get me your email and I'll be glad to add you to the email list. But right now, the best way to see what's going on is to go to the Facebook page. We have gained many, many followers and many, many viewers. In this past couple of months, we had like 28,000 views as the building went up.
Wow.
Excellent, Jeff. I just have one question. Been going through this a little bit, the club I'm in, that at some point we may have to move, and we've talked about a building. And one of the things that we were very intrigued by was the concept of having the area under the actual footprint of the layout be 2 or 3 feet lower than the aisles, so that when you were working under the layout, you weren't working under, something that was 42 inches high. It was actually more like 5.5 to 6 feet high, so you actually could be underneath there. Did you guys have any consideration of trying to do that, because you have such a deep crawl space?
Yeah, well, the crawl space is strictly utility space. We again, the geography, because of the sloping lot and the stream, the building had to be elevated to be out of the water zone. And so, and that's why it's got those little flood doors on the concrete wall. In the unlikely event that we get a big flood, that it won't touch the building and it'll pass through the foundation. However, as Steve observed, our original layout did have a considerable workspace underneath, and with a 12-foot high ceiling, we definitely have the ability to do something like that. Again, we're very much talking about a multi-level layout.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other questions for Jeff? Well, thanks very much, Jeff. Appreciate that. And it was absolutely great. We look forward to your next progress report. It'll be exciting, I think, to occasionally over the next year as you guys move along and get farther along. But it's great. It's just great to see, you know, how you're doing something that's going to be great for the model railroaders in the community as well as for the community itself. So
That's a very
absolutely
good
super.
point. We both are gaining members as the building is going up. We get a lot of attention, but also we have been working with the community that this is going to be a new attraction in the community. We're open to the public. We have the museum space. We have the parkland. We have the parking area. We have the walking trails. We are tentatively listed with the Virginia Tourism Authority as a site to see in Middletown.
Excellent. That's absolutely super. So thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to the next time.